Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm going to do my monthly reading stats for November 2020. So November actually was a better reading month than I thought it was going to be. It didn't start out so great due to everybody's mindset with the election and stuff. But I had a week off in vacation after a really hard week after you know, family tragedy. So the point is that it was like an up and down reading month, but I did finish quite a few things, and I'm kind of surprised. Most of that was finished during that week I had off from work. So anyway, I thought I would just kind of go through my stats, my little list here, and let's go through this. So how many books did I finish in the month? I finished a total of 14, but 2 of them were rereads. So I finished 12 new things to me. Of the 14 that I read, 12 were physical and 2 were ebooks. Audiobooks just were not, I was not into like a lot of audiobooks. I did, you know, I did listen to one, but it's just, I of course never finished. No. How many graphic novels or manga did I read? I read 1 from the library. Any rereads, as I said, there were 2. And then DNFs, I had a DNF that I technically had been reading in October, but it wasn't until November that I made a decision just to take the book back to the library and DNF that. So that's kind of how that went. So it counts. I read it in October, all the pages I did read, but it's one of the weird ones. I usually DNF within the same month, but that was kind of an odd one. How many books were on my TBR for November? I think I did this. No, that is right. So, okay, November, I had a really weird TBR because I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to read for nonfiction November. And I decided not to put all of them on my TBR. I put like 3 books all together on my TBR. I only read 1 of the books that I put on my TBR, my solid TBR. And then everything else I read was extraneous. So, and the nonfiction I put on my TBR I didn't read. Anyway, because it was a bad month. Anyway, overall. Anyway, so yeah, it was a weird one. Again, TBRs work sometimes, sometimes don't. Of the books that I read, 11 of them, of the new books that I read, 11 of them were mine that came off my bookshelf, and 1 came from the library. So that to me is a really good number. I usually get too many library books, especially during nonfiction November. Even though I have tons of books to read, I still pull a lot from the library, and I didn't this month, which was really good. And then how many books was I reading as I passed from from November into December? I was only the 1 audiobook, Red Comet, about Sylvia Plath. That one is the only one that's carried over from last month to this month. So that one still I'm working on, and that was the audiobook that I didn't finish in November. Anyway, so how many books did I buy this month? If you saw my book haul, you know it was a lot of number. It was 27. So that's kind of painful. And then I bought a lot of books that didn't show up until December. So technically I bought more in November than that, but I'm counting them for December because I didn't get them until December. Kind of a cheat, and yet, you know, that's just how it goes. And how many did I read? How many of those of the 27 that I bought, how many of those have I read? I only read 2. And 25 of those were put onto my TBR, so not very good numbers on that. Number of pages I read for the month, I read 3,950. And that comes out to an average of 131 pages, 0.7. So that's actually really good. Again, anytime I'm over 100, I'm ecstatic. I have a threshold of I want to be 50 pages a day or more. And so anytime I'm over the 50, I'm good. I'd much rather be in the over the 100, so it's really good when I'm way over like 131. That's really good for me per day. And again, that's only because of that vacation where I read a lot. My star ratings, so it's pretty typical. I had 2 5-star reads, and 4 4-stars, and 4 3-stars. So again, I think I'm doing pretty good recently of finding books that are at least I'm going to enjoy enough to give it a 3-star. So And again, when I don't, I DNF, so I'm doing pretty good on that. So again, that's pretty good. But here's my genres for November, which again are not typical, because normally nonfiction November, I do really try to focus on reading a lot of nonfiction, but this month that didn't happen, and I was lucky I read as much as I did. So I read 1 fantasy, 2 general nonfiction, 1 nature nonfiction, 1 memoir, 1 historical fiction, 1 alternate history, 1 magical realism, 3 paranormal romances. 2 of those were the rereads. Anyway, and then 1 science fiction. So, you know, really, I still hit a lot of genres, which I was completely surprised about, because normally that's even more than some months this year, where I follow a read-a-thon, but I'm also reading other stuff, and this is like one of the best of my all over the place. Although I did have 4 nonfiction in there. Anyway, would have liked more. Anyway, so the best book of the month was The Blacksmith Queen by G.A. Aiken. I love this book. So this is a light fantasy. It's very light on the details, but it's very, you know, tropey that way. But it's so fun and raunchy and hilarious. Over the top. Super over the top with blood and gore and everything. But it's just so much fun. And so many twists and turns. We follow Keely, who is a blacksmith and comes from a long line of blacksmiths in her family. And, you know, family is very dear to her. And there's now a prophecy that one of her sisters is supposed to be queen. And it's kind of like what happens with all that. So it was just, this is really, really good. Again, the series has only 2 books out right now, but I just finished the 2nd book. But I really enjoyed it. It's the Scarred Earth saga. So this is the best book I read in a really long time. I really, really enjoyed it. It was just so much fun and light for fantasy, and then also had it was just hilarious. I just love her as a writer. And then let me just double check, I didn't write another note on here, but I'm pretty sure, no, of course. My most disappointing, and I'm not counting the DNF because that was from last month, but, and it wasn't that big a deal. But this is my most disappointing book, which is Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. This is translated by Philip Gabriel from the Japanese. So I've had this on my shelf since 2005. This is on my oldest books on my TBR that I was trying to get through this year, which I did okay. But anyway, we'll go into that later. Oh my gosh. So there was so much good in here and so much I hated. So this is very much a mixed bag for me for Murakami. I mean, I usually like his chunkers. Usually during those, the magical realism and the things that are happening that are, you know, the magical parts are just so fascinating, and I love his characters and the way they usually talk to each other. I don't always like what they're thinking, but I meant it's like they have, their conversations are really intellectual in a lot of things of books and music and sometimes movies and things like he has, like, it's very relevant, like very much like they make sense like in that world, in that time frame. And they all have complicated lives. But this one just didn't work for me due to one of the characters and a lot of things that he did, especially near the end of the book. This has one of the most horrific scenes. That is not the reason why that this is a most disappointing book. The most disappointing is because half this book was following one character that by the end I hated him so much. And it was such a disappointment. It didn't matter how it wrapped up in the end and how it all worked and how maybe that needed to be there. There was a scene that I'm like, that was the breaking point for me, and I almost DNF'd it at 400 pages, which to me is a disappointment. You do not want to get 400 pages into a 505 page book and want to DNF it. And it was really the other storyline that, because there's 2 parallel ones that I was really into, the reason why I kept reading this was really the other line. And I'm glad I did, because I liked how that all went. And again, by the end, I see what his intention was. I still didn't like it. Anyway, point is, I finished it. I've had this book on my shelf for years. I finally got to it, and but I was not happy with the end. Anyway, so that is my stats for November 2020. How was your reading in November? Did you get to read a lot of books? Again, I had a vacation, which is the only reason why I read over half those books in that one week. So that kind of helped with my numbers. and stuff. So anyway, and luckily they're mostly good readings. So anyway, except for that one. Anyway, so I will talk to you guys later. Bye.